Hey Reddit. I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these stories, but here I am. My name's Jason, 34, and up until recently I thought I had a solid marriage with my wife, Susan, 32. We had been together for 6 years, married for 4, and I really believed we were in a good place. We weren't perfect, but we loved each other. Or at least I thought we did. Susan and I had been trying for a baby for a while, and when she finally got pregnant, I was over the moon. I was the kind of guy who wanted to be a dad more than anything. I read all the books, went to every doctor's appointment, and started setting up a nursery. I cut down my hours at work to be there for her. I took care of everything so she could relax. Cooking, cleaning, you name it. I wanted to make sure she felt supported. Looking back, maybe I should have noticed the signs. The way she'd get weirdly defensive when I asked simple questions. How she started working late more often, saying she had deadlines to meet. How she suddenly got distant in bed, brushing me off with excuses like being tired or stressed. But I trusted her. I didn't think twice about it. Then came the night everything started to unravel. Susan had a baby shower planned by her best friend, Lisa, and it was a big deal. All our friends, both our families, a whole event. I was just happy to see her happy, surrounded by people who loved her. But then, during the party, her phone buzzed on the counter while she was across the room. I don't normally snoop, but I glanced at the screen out of habit. Just a name, Mr. Thompson, popped up with a message underneath. We need to talk. Call me when you can. That's when I felt something in my gut. Her boss. A man she'd mentioned a few times, but never in any way that seemed suspicious. I don't know why, but something about it just made my stomach churn. I made a mental note of it, but I didn't say anything right away. I mean, it could have been about work, right? I didn't want to be that jealous, insecure husband. But something inside me wouldn't let it go. I decided to test the waters later that night. Hey, I saw your boss texted you earlier, I said casually while we were cleaning up after the party. Everything okay at work? Susan froze for half a second, just long enough for me to notice. Then she laughed, a little too forced. Oh yeah, just some last-minute scheduling stuff. He's a pain, but you know how it is. I nodded, pretending to buy it. But that's when I decided I needed to know the truth. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I waited until she fell asleep, then I took her phone. And what I found changed everything. I sat there in the dark, staring at Susan's phone, my hands shaking. I hesitated for a moment, my gut twisting with guilt, but something told me I had to do this. I unlocked her phone. Yeah, I knew her passcode. She wasn't exactly secretive about it before. The first thing I checked was her messages with Mr. Thompson, and that's when my whole world started crumbling. The first few messages looked innocent enough. Work-related, nothing out of the ordinary. But the more I scrolled up, the worse it got. I can't stop thinking about last night. You were amazing. Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything? I hate sneaking around like this, but I can't stay away from you. My chest tightened. My breathing got heavy. I kept scrolling even though I already knew what I was going to find. Then I hit the worst one. Are you going to tell him? Or are we just going to pretend the baby is his? I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I read that text over and over again, hoping I was misunderstanding something. But no, it was clear as day. Susan was sleeping with her boss. And now there was a chance that the baby I had been so excited for wasn't even mine. I don't know how long I sat there, phone in hand, just staring at the screen. A part of me wanted to wake her up right then and there, scream at her, demand answers. But another part of me, the part that was still in shock, just shut down. I needed proof. Real proof. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to my own phone. Then, just to be sure, I opened her photo gallery. There were a few harmless pictures of her at work, but then I found a hidden album. I clicked on it and my stomach dropped. Pictures of them. Selfies in a hotel room. Some of just him shirtless. One of her in bed, half covered by sheets. I felt like I was going to be sick. I put her phone back exactly where I found it and walked out of the bedroom. I needed air. I needed time to process. I spent the whole night on the couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. My whole marriage, everything I had built with this woman, was a lie. By morning I had made my decision. I wasn't going to confront her yet. Not until I had a plan. Not until I was ready. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to raise another man's child. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Susan in that hotel room with him. Every promise, every I love you, every plan we made, it was all a joke to her. And now she was trying to pass off another man's child as mine. By the time the sun came up, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to explode on her. Not yet. If I went off right away, she'd just lie, twist things around, maybe even try to delete the evidence. No, I needed to be smart about this. So I played dumb. When Susan woke up, she came out of the bedroom rubbing her eyes. "Morning, babe," she said, yawning. "Why are you up so early?" I forced a smile. Couldn't sleep. Just thinking about baby names. I saw the slightest flicker of something cross her face. Guilt? Panic? But she covered it up fast and smiled. "Ah, that's sweet." She walked over, kissing me on the cheek like nothing was wrong. I was thinking maybe something classic. Like Daniel if it's a boy or Olivia for a girl. I wanted to laugh. She was really trying to act like everything was fine. Like she wasn't carrying her boss's baby and expecting me to raise it. "Yeah," I said, nodding. "Those are nice." I needed more time to get my ducks in a row. A confrontation wouldn't be enough. I wanted to burn this whole thing down. So, over the next few days I started preparing. First, I made copies of everything, the text, the pictures, the screenshots. I saved them to multiple places, including a USB drive I kept at work. If Susan tried to delete anything, I'd still have proof. Then I reached out to a lawyer. I didn't tell them everything yet, just asked about divorce procedures and how paternity fraud worked in our state. I wanted to be ready for every scenario. The hardest part? Pretending everything was normal. Susan kept acting like the loving wife, talking about nursery colors and baby registries. She had no idea that every time she spoke, I was imagining the moment I'd expose her for the lying snake she was. Then, just when I thought I had a solid plan, something unexpected happened. Her boss, Mr. Thompson, showed up at our house. I was in the living room when I heard the knock. Susan was in the kitchen, and when she peeked through the window and saw who it was, she froze. "Who is it?" I asked, pretending not to notice her reaction. Just a work thing," she said quickly, forcing a smile. "I'll handle it. You don't have to get up." Now, if I hadn't seen those messages, I probably wouldn't have thought twice. But I had seen them. And the way she stiffened? The way she rushed to the door? That told me everything. So, I did the opposite of what she wanted. I got up and followed her. She opened the door just enough to step outside, but I was right behind her. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked, leaning casually against the doorway. Mr. Thompson, tall guy, probably mid-40s, looking like he just walked out of a business meeting, looked startled to see me. Susan, on the other hand, looked like she wanted to sink into the ground. Jason, this is my boss, Mr. Thompson," she said quickly, her voice a little too high-pitched. "He just needed to talk to me about work stuff. Nothing important." Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. "Right. Just a small scheduling issue." Now, I could have called them out right there. Could have asked him if the scheduling issue was about how he knocked up my wife. But I wasn't ready yet. So instead I smiled. "Oh, nice to meet you. Susan's told me a lot about you." I saw something flicker in his eyes, maybe panic, maybe guilt. But he nodded. "Likewise." Susan was practically vibrating with tension. "Jason, babe, can you give us a sec? This'll only take a minute." I acted like I was considering it, then nodded. "Sure." I walked back inside, but not too far. I positioned myself near the window, just out of sight, and listened. And what I heard confirmed everything. "We can't do this here," Susan whispered, her voice sharp. "Jason's home." "I know," Thompson hissed back. "But you haven't answered my calls. We need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," she said quickly. "I told you I'm handling it." "Handling it how?" His voice was getting more impatient. "Are you sure he won't ask for a paternity test?" My blood ran cold. There it was. Proof. I had heard enough. I walked back toward the door, making sure to step loudly this time. The second they heard me, they both shut up. I put on my best clueless husband face. "Everything good?" Susan jumped. "Yeah, all good. He was just leaving." Mr. Thompson gave me one last look, then muttered, "Yeah, take care." And with that he left. Susan shut the door quickly and turned to me with an awkward laugh. "Sorry about that. Work stress, you know how it is." I just smiled. Of course. No big deal. But inside, I was done playing along. She had one last chance to come clean. And if she didn't, I was going to make sure she regretted every single lie. After Mr. Thompson left, Susan was a nervous wreck. She tried to act normal, but I could see it in the way she fidgeted, how she kept checking her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I knew what she was thinking. Does Jason suspect anything? Did he hear us? How much time do I have before this all comes crashing down? And honestly, I could have confronted her right then and there. Just thrown the screenshots in her face and watched her squirm. But no, that was too easy. I wanted her to feel this. So I kept pretending. I went through the motions of being the excited dad-to-be. I asked her about baby names, nursery colors, Even talked about setting up a college fund. Each time, I could see the guilt creeping into her expression. She'd look away, bite her lip, then force a smile. But I wasn't just killing time. I was putting the final pieces in place. First, I had another meeting with my lawyer. I showed him the texts, the pictures, and the recording of Susan's little secret meeting with Mr. Thompson. His eyes went wide. "Well, Jason," he said, leaning back in his chair. "This is about as clear-cut as it gets. I learned that in our state, paternity fraud is a big deal. If Susan knowingly tried to pass another man's child off as mine, I had legal grounds to not only refuse child support but to sue her for damages. I'll handle the paperwork," my lawyer assured me. "Just let me know when you're ready to pull the trigger." That moment was coming soon. Next, I started gathering my personal belongings, important documents, sentimental items, anything I didn't want to risk losing. I moved them to my buddy Eric's place, telling Susan it was just for safekeeping in case of emergencies. She didn't question it. She was too distracted, constantly on edge. And then, finally, I was ready. I just needed one final push. And I got it. One evening, I was sitting on the couch when Susan came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders. "Hey babe," she cooed, pressing a kiss to my cheek. "I was thinking, maybe we should go on a little weekend getaway before the baby comes. Just the two of us." I almost laughed. She was desperate to lock me in. Probably realizing I was acting too calm and wanted to reel me back in before I got suspicious. But then she said something that sealed her fate. "I love you so much," she murmured, resting her head on my shoulder. "And I know you're going to be the best dad in the world." That was it. The last straw. I gently took her hands and pulled them off me. Then I turned to face her, looking her right in the eyes. "Susan," I said, my voice calm. "Are you sure this baby is mine?" Her face went white. She tried to laugh it off. "What? Babe, what kind of question is that?" I didn't blink. "Are you sure?" Now she looked scared. "Of course. Jason, why would you even?" I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshots, and handed it to her. The second she saw the messages, she stopped talking. She just sat there, staring at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then she did what cheaters always do. She started lying. "Jason, this isn't what it looks like," she stammered. He was harassing me. I didn't want this." I just raised an eyebrow. "Oh, so he forced you into hotels? Made you take selfies in bed with him? Forced you to send messages about how much you couldn't stay away?" Tears welled up in her eyes. I was confused. Okay. Was a mistake. But it didn't mean anything. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "A mistake? Susan, you carried on a whole affair for months. You got pregnant. And you were gonna let me raise his kid?" She started crying for real now. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I stood up. "Well, I do." I walked over to the drawer where I kept the divorce papers I had prepped with my lawyer. I pulled them out and placed them on the table. "Sign these," I said, my voice cold. "We're done." Susan's eyes widened. "Jason, wait." "No," I snapped. "I gave you every chance to be honest. I treated you like a queen. And this is what I get? I'm not raising another man's child, Susan. I'm not going to be the idiot husband you keep around while you sneak off with your boss." She sobbed harder. "Please, babe, we can fix this. It was just one mistake." "One mistake?" I barked out a laugh. "You plan to trap me, Susan. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." She was shaking now, looking between me and the divorce papers. "Please," she whispered. "Don't do this." But I was already done. "Sign the papers, Susan." And that was it. The moment her whole world crumbled. Susan just sat there, staring at the divorce papers like they might disappear if she waited long enough. Tears rolled down her face, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No regret. Just exhaustion. I can't," she finally whispered. "Jason, please don't do this." I crossed my arms. "You already did this, Susan." She shook her head frantically. "We can fix this. I'll cut him off. We'll raise the baby together." I slammed my hand on the table, making her jump. "That's his baby, Susan. Not mine." She broke down completely then, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. "But I love you," she choked out. "I never wanted to lose you." I picked up the pen and placed it in front of her. "Then you shouldn't have cheated." For a long time she didn't move. Just sat there, crying, shaking, broken. Then, slowly she reached for the pen. And I knew in that moment it was over. Susan held the pen like it weighed 100 pounds. Her hand shook, her tears dripped onto the papers, but I didn't care. "I don't want this," she whispered. "Jason, please don't make me do this." I exhaled sharply. "I'm not making you do anything. You made this choice the moment you slept with him? She sniffled, wiping her nose. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. I scoffed. So lying to me for months was better? Trapping me into raising another man's kid was the better option? She didn't answer. I leaned forward, voice low and firm. Sign. Papers. After a long pause, she let out a broken sob and finally put the pen to paper. One signature. And just like that, our marriage was over. She dropped the pen and buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. But me? I felt free. As soon as Susan signed, it was like a switch flipped. The crying stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. She stared at the papers, her hands trembling, like she couldn't believe what she had just done. I stood up and grabbed the documents. I'll have my lawyer file these first thing tomorrow. She shot up from her seat. Jason, wait. We don't have to rush this. Maybe we can. No, I cut her off coldly. This is happening. She looked desperate now. But what will people think? Our families, our friends? How do I explain this? I gave her a humorless laugh. Oh, that's what you're worried about? Not the fact that you destroyed our marriage, but how you'll explain it to everyone. She bit her lip. I don't want them to hate me. I shook my head. You should have thought about that before you cheated. Her face twisted in frustration. It wasn't just cheating, Jason. I was confused. I made a mistake. I stepped closer, my voice firm. No. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. A mistake is missing an anniversary. You had a months-long affair and got pregnant. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. She started crying again. I still love you. I clenched my jaw. If you loved me, we wouldn't be here right now. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Her face crumpled. Can't we at least talk? Give it time? I shook my head. There's nothing to talk about. I'm done, Susan. Then I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in stunned silence. The first call. That night, I went to my buddy Eric's place, where I had already moved most of my important stuff. The second I sat down on his couch, my phone started buzzing. Susan. I ignored it. Then came a flood of texts. Susan, please, Jason, talk to me. Susan, we can fix this. Susan, I can't lose you. Please. I put my phone face down on the table and took a deep breath. Eric watched me, arms crossed. You all right, man? I let out a bitter laugh. I should be. But I feel like I just wasted 6 years of my life on a lie. Eric nodded. Yeah, that's gotta hurt. He didn't sugarcoat things. That's why I trusted him. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Susan. It was her mother. I sighed and answered. Hello? Jason. Her voice was sharp. What is this nonsense about you divorcing Susan? I scoffed. Ask your daughter. She is my daughter and she's devastated, she snapped. She says you're leaving her over some misunderstanding. I nearly choked. A misunderstanding? Did she tell you she's pregnant? I asked. There was a pause. Yes, and she told me you were overjoyed. I clenched my jaw. And did she tell you the baby isn't mine? Silence. Then, finally, in a much softer voice, what? She cheated on me, got pregnant, and tried to pass the baby off as mine, I said, my voice steady. That's why I'm divorcing her. Her mother gasped. That can't be true. There must be some mistake. Check her phone, I said coldly. I have all the proof I need. She didn't say another word before hanging up. I sighed, leaning back on the couch. Well, that's one down. Eric smirked. Think she's telling her dad? I snorted. Oh, he's gonna love this. The next morning, I woke up to even more missed calls and texts. This time from Susan's dad. Now I actually liked the guy. He was old school, no nonsense, and didn't tolerate dishonesty. If anyone was going to take this news badly, it was him. I called him back. The second he answered, he was furious. Jason, what the hell is going on? I sighed. Did Susan tell you anything? She told me you're leaving her over some disagreement. I let out a sharp laugh. Disagreement? That's one way to put it. Then tell me the truth, he said. So I did. Every detail. The texts. The pictures. The pregnancy. The confrontation. When I finished, he was silent. Then he took a deep breath. That little? He cut himself off, voice shaking with anger. Jason, I swear to you I had no idea. If I did, I would've. I know, I said. That's why I'm telling you now. He was quiet for a long time. Then finally he muttered, I need to talk to her. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Good luck with that. He hung up. Susan loses everything. A few hours later, I got a text from Susan. Susan, you told my dad? I smirked. Me, he deserved to know. A few minutes passed. Then, Susan, he's furious. He won't even look at me. Susan, Jason, please. I don't know what to do. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because Susan had officially lost everything. Susan kept texting me, but I ignored every message. I had nothing left to say. A few hours later, Eric and I were grabbing lunch when my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I picked up. Hello? A deep voice answered. Jason, this is Mr. Thompson. I raised an eyebrow. Now this is interesting. I don't know what Susan told you, he started, but we need to discuss this like adults. I smirked. Oh, you mean how you knocked up my wife? A long pause. Then a sigh. Look, I didn't mean for this to happen. I laughed. Oh, you accidentally slept with her? Multiple times? Another pause. Then he tried again. I'll take responsibility for the baby, but let's not ruin lives over this. I leaned back in my chair. Oh, buddy, your life is already ruined. Silence. Then he hung up. I grinned. Let the downfall begin. After Mr. Thompson hung up, I sat there for a moment just taking it all in. He really thought he could negotiate his way out of this? That I'd be the reasonable guy and just let this slide? Not a chance. Eric chuckled from across the table. Dude, was that him? Yup, I said, shaking my head. He wants to discuss this like adults? Eric smirked. So, what's your next move? I thought about it for a second. I don't have to do anything. He's already panicking. I just have to sit back and watch. And I was right. Because it didn't take long before things really started falling apart for Susan and her boss. The first real consequence. That evening I got another call, this time from a mutual friend of ours, Lisa. She was one of Susan's closest friends, but she and I had always gotten along well. Jason, she said the second I picked up, what the hell is going on? I sighed. She didn't tell you? She told me her version, Lisa scoffed. That you suddenly went crazy, accused her of cheating, and left her. I laughed bitterly. Wow. She really left out the important parts? Yeah, that's why I'm calling you, Lisa said. Tell me what really happened. So I did. I told her everything. The texts. The pictures. The confrontation. How Susan tried to trap me into raising another man's child. By the time I finished, Lisa was dead silent. Then finally she muttered, that lying, ugh. I knew something was off. I asked her if there was another guy and she swore there wasn't. Yeah, well, I said. Now you know. Lisa sighed. Jason, I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that. I know, I said simply. Then she surprised me. I don't think she told any of our friends the truth. She's been playing the victim, acting like you just abandoned her. That didn't shock me one bit. Do me a favor then, I said. Tell them the real story. Lisa didn't hesitate. Oh, don't worry. I will. The office meltdown. The next day, I got an email from someone I never expected. An anonymous coworker from Susan's office. The subject line? Thought you'd want to see this. Inside was a forwarded email thread. It was a complaint, filed by an employee, against Mr. Thompson. Apparently, word had spread about his affair with Susan, and someone in the company wasn't happy about it. The complaint accused him of unprofessional behavior, favoritism, and inappropriate workplace relationships. I grinned. What was happening? Then, a few hours later, another text from Lisa. Lisa, Susan just had a full-on meltdown. She's screaming at her parents, crying about how she lost everything. I stared at the screen, then typed back. Me good. Lisa wasn't kidding, Susan was losing it. That night, I got another text from her. Susan, please Jason, just talk to me. One last time. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, another one. Susan, I can't sleep, I can't eat. I don't know what to do. Again, I ignored her. Then she tried to call. I watched the phone ring, then let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, a text popped up. Susan, I'm begging you. Please. It was weird. Just days ago, she was still trying to manipulate me, acting like we could fix this. Now. She sounded desperate. I put my phone on silent. I didn't care how sorry she was, she made her bed and now she had to lie in it. The work disaster. The next morning, I got another message from my anonymous office contact. You're not going to believe this. Attached was a screenshot of an internal company memo. Effective immediately, Mr. Thompson has been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. I burst out laughing. Susan's affair partner, the guy who wrecked my marriage, was officially screwed. I called Eric right away. Guess who just got suspended? No way, he laughed. The boss? Yup. I smirked. Guess workplace affairs aren't a good look after all? Eric whistled. And Susan? No idea. But if she thought Mr. Thompson was her safety net, she just lost him too. The final message. Later that night, Susan texted me one last time. Susan, you told my dad. You told my friends. You let everyone turn against me. Me, I didn't have to. You did that all on your own. A long pause. Then, Susan, I hate myself. I stared at the message for a long time. Then finally I typed back. Me good. And with that, I blocked her number. It was finally over. After I blocked Susan, I expected things to calm down. Maybe she'd finally accept reality and deal with the mess she made. But no. The next day, Lisa texted me again. Lisa, you're not going to believe this. Me, what now? Lisa, Susan showed up at my place in tears. She kept saying she needed to talk to someone because everyone hates her. I smirked. Oh, so now she's realizing that actions have consequences? Me, and what did you say? Lisa, I told her she did this to herself. Then I kicked her out. I actually laughed out loud. Damn. Lisa was ruthless. Then she sent another text. Lisa, she's losing it, Jason. She's saying she has nothing left. I stared at the message for a moment. Then I typed back. Me, she's right. The last straw. 2 days later, I got a call from her father. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. Hello? He sighed. Jason, I won't take up much of your time. I wanted to say I'm sorry. That actually caught me off guard. For what? For defending Susan, he admitted. For believing her lies at first. I didn't raise her to be like this. I exhaled. I appreciate that. But it's not your fault. He let out a bitter laugh. Maybe not. But she's paying for it now. She lost her friends, her reputation, and Mr. Thompson? He won't even return her calls? I shook my head. She thought he'd save her. Yeah, her dad muttered. And now, she's completely alone. I had nothing left to say. Susan had officially lost everything. And honestly, she deserved it. After my conversation with Susan's dad, I thought things were finally settling down. I had blocked Susan, cut off every connection, and was just waiting for the divorce to be finalized. But Susan wasn't done yet. A week later, I was at work when I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't think much of it and answered. Jason? I froze. Even though I had her blocked, Susan had found another way to reach me. I sighed. What do you want, Susan? She sniffled. I need to see you. Please. No. Just once, she begged. Just give me one conversation. If you never want to talk to me again after that, I'll respect it. I should have just hung up. But I was curious. What more could she possibly say? Fine, I said. One conversation. But don't expect anything from me. She agreed, and we set a time to meet at a local coffee shop the next day. The meeting. When I walked in, Susan was already there, sitting at a corner table. She looked terrible, her eyes were puffy, her hair was a mess, and she had clearly lost weight. She looked up as I approached. You came? Let's get this over with, I said, sitting down. She fidgeted with her coffee cup, staring at it instead of me. I don't know where to start. Try why you did this, I said bluntly. She flinched but nodded. I was stupid, she whispered. I got caught up in the excitement, in the attention. I never meant to hurt you, Jason. I scoffed. You never meant to? Susan, you planned to make me raise another man's child. That's not an accident. She wiped at her eyes. I know. And I hate myself for it. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Then why am I here? What do you want? Susan hesitated, then took a shaky breath. I want to fix this. I stared at her, completely baffled. Fix what? We're divorcing, Susan. There's nothing left to fix. But we were happy once, she pleaded. We can find our way back. I shook my head. No, we can't. You killed that possibility the moment you chose to betray me. Her face crumpled, and for a second she looked truly broken. I don't know how to live without you, she admitted. I sighed, rubbing my temples. You should have thought about that before you slept with your boss. She reached across the table, grabbing my hand. Jason, I love you. I yanked my hand away. No, you don't. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You loved the security I gave you. The comfort. The stability. She shook her head frantically. That's not true. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Then why did you try to pass off his baby as mine? Because you loved me? Or because you were terrified of losing me? She had no answer. I stood up. This was a mistake. Goodbye, Susan. She grabbed my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. Wait. I glared at her, yanking my arm free. You don't get to trap me anymore. She burst into tears as I walked away. But I didn't look back. Because for the first time since this nightmare started, I was truly done. I thought that was it. I thought walking out of that coffee shop was the last time I'd have to deal with Susan. I was wrong. A few days later I got a call from an unknown number. I ignored it. Then another. And another. Finally a voicemail popped up. It was Susan. Jason, please. I know you don't want to talk to me, but I don't know what else to do. I need help. I sighed. She had burned every bridge with me. I didn't owe her anything. But a part of me was still curious. So I listened. I have nowhere to go, she continued. My dad won't let me stay with them. Lisa and the others have cut me off, and I just don't know what to do. Her voice cracked. Please. I don't want to be alone. I deleted the voicemail. She wasn't my problem anymore. The final straw. That night I was hanging out with Eric when my phone buzzed again. This time it was Lisa. Lisa, you're not going to believe this. I rolled my eyes. Me, what now? Lisa, Susan showed up at my place again. I raised an eyebrow. Me and? Lisa, she asked if I could talk to you for her. I laughed. Me, she really thinks that'll work? Lisa, I told her to leave, but before she did, she said something crazy. She wants to talk to Mr. Thompson. I froze. Me, what? Lisa, she said if she can't get you back, she might as well try to fix things with him. I let out a slow breath. What? So after all this, she was still trying to cling to someone? Me, she's desperate. Lisa, yeah. It's actually kinda sad. Sad. Maybe. But I wasn't wasting another second feeling bad for her. Susan made her choices. Now she had to live with them. Lisa's message stuck in my head. Susan had lost everything. Her marriage, her friends, her family's support. And now, with no one left to turn to, she was crawling back to him. Mr. Thompson. The man who helped destroy her life. I didn't hear anything about her for a few days. But then, out of nowhere, Lisa sent me another update. Lisa, she actually did it. She went to see him. I stared at my phone. Me and? Lisa, it didn't go how she expected. Me, how bad? Lisa, really bad. He shut her down completely. I exhaled. Not surprising. Mr. Thompson was already under fire at work, and with his job on the line, the last thing he needed was Susan clinging to him. Me, what did he say? Lisa, apparently he told her it was over. That she needed to move on and handle her own mess. I smirked. Wow, what a guy. Susan had blown up her whole life for this man, and he discarded her the second she became inconvenient. Me, did she take it well? Lisa, not at all. She had a full breakdown right there in the office parking lot. Me, let me guess. More crying? Lisa, more like screaming. Security had to escort her out. I couldn't help but shake my head. It was pathetic, really. She thought she could run back to him, that he'd be her safety net. But just like she had used me, he had used her. And now, she was completely alone. The final goodbye. The next day I got one last text from Susan. Susan, I have no one left. No friends. No family. No job. No future. I stared at it for a while. Then I typed back. Me, not my problem. And with that, I blocked her for good. I was finally free. Blocking Susan felt like closing the last chapter of a book I never wanted to read in the first place. I was done. No more texts. No more pleading. No more desperate attempts to drag me back into her mess. And honestly, it felt good. Where things stand now. The divorce went through without much of a fight. Susan had no leverage, no way to argue against it. She signed everything just like she had signed away our marriage the moment she chose to cheat. Mr. Thompson? He didn't last much longer at his job. The company wanted nothing to do with the scandal, and from what I heard, he resigned to pursue other opportunities. In reality, he got pushed out. As for Susan? Well, she disappeared from our old friend group. Last I heard, she moved in with a distant relative, trying to piece her life back together. But no one really keeps in touch with her anymore. She made her bed. Now she had to lie in it, alone. Moving forward, it took me a while to heal. To stop feeling the weight of betrayal every time I thought about her. But eventually, I did. I focused on myself, my friends, my career. I started dating again, not rushing into anything, just enjoying life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Looking back, I don't regret how I handled things. Susan thought she could lie, manipulate, and trap me into raising another man's child. She thought she could cheat and still keep everything she had. But life doesn't work that way. She lost everything. And me? I walked away with my dignity, and a future that no longer had her in it. Final thoughts. If there's one thing I learned from this, It's that betrayal doesn't just destroy relationships, it destroys the people who commit it. Susan lost everything because of her choices. And I came out stronger. So, to anyone out there dealing with betrayal, walk away. Cut them off. Focus on yourself. Because in the end, the best revenge is moving on.